Hello, we're in week 2, assignment 2. This tutorial is going to be using Photoshop, and we want to first examine the terms warm and cool, analogous, and a high key and low key. Now the intervals relate to the number of steps. There are 7 intervals here. Warm and cool relate to color temperature, and analogous relates to colors that are adjacent on the color wheel. So let's start with color temperature, warm and cool. If we're, getting a sensation of heat and bright sunlight, warm flame, closing our eyes, looking through our eyelids at the sun, looking at the fireplace, sensation of warmth. A sensation of cool would be, color that relates to, say, the water, swimming pools, and cool green grass, and the ocean, and that kind of, cooler temperatures in the winter, forests, and, green forests and blue oceans, and, purple mountains in the winter. Sensations of cool. Now, warmer colors tend to advance. Cooler colors tend to recede in space. So using color temperature to produce the illusion of depth. Spatially, warm and brighter color comes forward. Cool and muted tones often recede in space. Now, colors, analogous colors, are colors that share properties. For example, magenta, magenta red, and red. These colors are related to each other because they share properties, and they would be considered analogous colors on this additive subtractive color wheel. Cyan, cyan, green, and green also share properties, and they would be considered analogous colors. You could just use 2 colors, cyan and cyan blue. Those would be analogous colors. Same thing on the traditional color wheel. Red, orange, orange, and yellow, orange all share this very close properties. Green and blue, green to blue, those would share properties as well. So colors next to each other on the color wheel, if if they go too far, they no longer share properties. Okay, now, these colors on the line here, these colors are borderline, and they can go either warm or cool depending on what they're placed next to. That relates to color relativity. You take this violet and you place it next to orange or yellow, it's going to appear cool. If you place the color next to blue, cyan blue, it's going to appear warmer. Same thing with this yellow green. If you place it next to this yellow orange, it's going to feel cooler, but next to blue or blue violet, it's going to feel warmer. So again, depending on how it's used, it can go either way. So use judiciously. All right, so we're going to start with a warm hue, and one of our assignment criteria is to vary the parent colors in value and saturation. So we want to make sure that we start with a warm color. So let's just start, say, with a magenta, okay, at 300. So that's a nice magenta, and we're going to vary the saturation. So if I want to start with a maximum saturation, I also want to consider that I'm going to vary the value. So that would be at 50% value. So if I start with a tint of the color, and I want to vary the saturation, I can modify the saturation and brightness. Let's start with a tint. Okay, so then I'm going to go every 10%, every 10 points, every 10 degrees to vary my color. I'm going to increase the saturation and reduce the brightness. And I'm going to have to get a little bit more dramatic as I go to produce varied value, because we're going for both value and saturation reduction. So as I increase, go along the intervals, I want to be a little bit more aggressive with my varied saturation. Okay, 340, pushing the value up, reducing the brightness. See, it's getting darker in value. 350, increasing the saturation, reducing the brightness. It's getting darker in value. So we're modifying both the saturation and the brightness. I'm at 360. I'm going to make that 100%, and I'm going to go down there. And now I have a dramatic transition in value. Command or Alt-U can check the value range by reducing the saturation, and I have a variation in value as well as a variation in saturation, analogous color, warm colors. Okay, for the second row here, we're going to be working in cool color. So we're going to start with a cool color. We want to vary the saturation. So I'm going to start with I can start with a darker value if I choose. It can be a little bit brighter, or I can just be, you know, whatever I choose to do. I'm here at, let's just start at, say 120. That's going to put me in a nice green. And say I want to start at a nice middle value shade of green. Okay, so here we go. And I'm going to start there. And I can actually, if I want to, make this lighter as I go. So I'm going to go analogous 130. And I'm going to start increasing this. And I'm going to just play around with this value and not the saturation. 140. Okay, this isn't going to be as dramatic, but I will get varied saturation. 150. 160. 170. And maximum saturation at 180. Okay, so I have analogous use, and I have transition, not a great transition value, Command U. Let's check that out, but I do have some some variation. So, you know, that goes from 25 to 50, so that's within 25%, and I have colors that I can play around with for a design. We're going to use 2 of these intervals in week 2, assignment 3. Producing the illusion of depth will be one of the criteria that we're going for. So, okay, this one, warm to cool. All right, so we're going to start with a warm color. Okay, let's start with a nice, a nice yellow-orange, say, at 45. All right, so start with a yellow-orange, and we want to end with cool. We want to vary the saturation, and we want to vary the key. So if I start with maximum saturation, that's high key. Then I want to actually start decreasing the brightness. I'm going to just go 50, do it every 5. No, I'm sorry. I need to be more dramatic with this, more aggressive with this, because I'm going towards cool. So warm to cool. So let me go from 50 to 65. That's the way to do it. Okay, and go a little bit more, you know, warm to cool, and I'm getting lighter as I go. Yeah, I probably get a little bit lighter than that. I think that, because I'm pushing for lighter value here. So I'm going to, okay. And I'm going to really go light here for this last color. Okay, so now, you know, I have a transition going from a maximum saturation through. I could come in, I don't think these colors, the transitions, I jumped around a little bit too much. I might want to push that back a little bit more towards a yellow-green and maybe make that just a little bit lighter, so we can, you know, modify colors once we, you know, plug them in to make sure that they are meeting the criteria. You know, you have to go back and forth. It's not as quick and easy as an Illustrator, but, you know, I want to push that color a wee bit more towards yellow-green, make it a little bit lighter. You know, we're doing this by eye. You know, it actually, when, you know, you think about it, this takes a little bit more skill, say, than someone mixing these colors in Illustrator, because in Illustrator, it, you know, it does the trick. It does the blends for you. So here we go. Make that a little bit lighter. And this last one is pretty light. I'm going to even go lighter than that. I'm trying to get my, you know, a broader value transition here. So it gets a little bit varied. Command U. Let's check that out. I've got now a greater variety of value, as well as a variety of warm to cool. So I can, you know, I can keep modifying that if I want, make that a little bit more smooth. Maybe this one should be just a little bit more green, and, you know, we're good to go. So I think that looks a little bit more smoother. Okay, let's go on to the next row, warm to cool. We want to have a low key interval. So start with, let's start with what the heck, let's start with red, and we want this to be low key, so I'm going to go with a nice shade of red here, and I'm going to, gradually go towards cool. So I'm going to be a little bit more dramatic in terms of jumping from color to color here. Let's see, go a little bit more dramatic, and I'm getting darker in value. So we can just push this value down a little bit more, and we're going to end up with a color that's going to probably be pretty dark, nearly black. And that's one of the kind of games that we can play here. Make a color almost black and still have a bit of U in it. There you go. Command U, or lower key. I'm going to eliminate the saturation. In this one, I go from 30, 20, 19, down to 13. So from 30 to 13, I have a bit of a variety. I can Command Z allows my color to come back. I could, modify this a little bit, but I definitely wanted low key. I could maybe make that one a little bit brighter. So these are the adjustments that we make as we are working to consider both variety in saturation and value while maintaining a low-key warm to cool, but still giving a range of transition so that it's a little bit smoother. I still take a look at this one. I could make that color a wee bit more towards yellow-orange because I think the color just jumped a little bit too dramatically there. So, making these adjustments, making smooth transitions, it takes more time in Photoshop, but, the more you do it, the more you understand the principles of color mixing and how to control it as an artist. All right, the next step we want to do is go to File, Save for Web and Devices. You could, check the whole value range again if you wanted to, just to double check, but we've done that a couple of times. So we're going to go to File, Save for Web and Devices. Make sure we're in JPEG High Optimize. We do not need to change the size of the template. It's perfect. We click Save, and then the next thing that we want to do is put our last name, underscore first, underscore W for week 2, A for assignment 2, and then if we need to make some revisions based on feedback, we would then, for the next file, save it as a V2 or as a redo, and that way we would be able to add it to our image file folder. So here we go. We can, save it to our images, my image files, where I want to save this one. This is not the redo, this is the first one. So I'm going to save it. I'm done, and I have met the assignment. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.